the point, they stay put. And that is really, really incredible. Most of the time. Every now and then one of them will get up and move a few feet, but not very often. So when you get a point, and the dog, the smell is so incredible, normally you don't get false points. So the reliability on the dog point is pretty high as well, which makes for fantastic falconry. The other thing is sage grouse is not an easy catch. The falcon has to club the living daylights out of it, hit it really hard before it tries to bind to it. If it tries to bind to it, all it's going to do is get 2 feet full of feathers, regardless of how big the bird of prey is. In fact, they call the big sage grouse boomers because they can just keep flying even with the falcon hooked to them. So sage grouse hawking is absolutely incredible. I had a big female hybrid for years that died of congestive heart failure that the University of Missouri told me that's what she had. So I didn't do anything wrong, but flying sage grouse with her was a whole lot of fun. I picked a female. The biggest thing, the best bird to fly that we've found over time for sage grouse, well actually prairie chickens too, is a hybrid between the peregrine and the gyrfalcon, a gyrperegrine. They're a little snappier, they're a little quicker. I wanted the big bird in the sky, and I wanted to see the great big crash and the wallop when they hit the. So it was, and I had flown somewhere in my career. I had flown at least 2 hybrids between Tiercel hybrids between the peregrine, one peregrine prairie falcon and one peregrine gyr. So I'd already been there and done that, and I wanted to try something different. Back to training the dog and species, you have to find the dog that matches your psyche. I had 2 Vizslas, and neither one of them were quite the fit. And the biggest thing wrong with a pointer is that home life can be pretty complicated in my experience. And with a setter, you can have a really good bird dog with home life as well as a really exceptional bird dog in the field, and get the two to come together a whole lot better than you can with a pointer. As I said, my experience with pointers is I've worked behind German short hairs, English pointers, and I just prefer setters across the board, whether they're English, but I've now had the second red setter I've had is actually a red setter field trial club dog that is a field trial dog, and everybody says, oh, you won't get along with, because they do things differently in the field trials, and they work them off a horseback and the dog runs too fast and they go too wide, and I've had none of those problems with this red setter I got as a field trial dog, other than when she was a puppy. She was really fast and you had to get her to slow down so she wouldn't run through points. But that was a training mechanism that was for me to work out and was not a fault of the dog. Dogs, okay. We're about done here. Traveling. Falconry and traveling. Being based out of the center of the United States, I'm able to experience falconry in all sorts of different places and habitats. For years in the 80s, I would finish up falconry season with the Pennsylvania club meet after Christmas, the first week of January, at spring ponds. They have these deep underground springs that bubble up water warm enough to keep the ponds open, big enough water for ducks to be on the open water, and it's a very controlled, very unique style of duck hawking, and in front of all these usually estate houses from big farms in ancient. I worked out of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which, if you are a Civil War buff, north of Gettysburg, the Confederates went up to Harrisburg for shoes, and then came back down through Carlisle, and then the big battle at Gettysburg, all that in that Chambersburg. That's where we were flying, and I had so much fun doing that to finish up the season. And then I've flown at NAFA meets all these years, all over the United States. There's been special places. Amarillo has been a lot of fun to fly. Kearney, Nebraska has always been exciting to fly. I actually liked Alamosa, Colorado in the early years of NAFA meets at Alamosa, Colorado. I've been to one California Hawking Club meet at Yuba City in 1993, and I didn't bring a bird because I flew in airplane, and we were flying a goshawk in the drainage ditches around the rice fields, and man was that exciting to fly at ducks on the rise out of those ditches. And it was typical goshawk flight. The ducks would rise, the goshawk would fly, and then roll over underneath them and grab them from underneath and then turn upside right down. So the duck was upside down and then fly it to the ground. Very exciting falconry. If you notice, I say falconry and falconry both, and it's because of being in the middle of the United States and the Great Plains and the Ozarks and stuff. Sometimes you get the wrong accent on the syllable. So anyway, transport. I started out hawking out of a 1956 Pontiac hardtop. Took out the back seat and made almost like a muse in the back seat of the car for the red tail. And by the time I started flying other things, I had a pickup truck that had a box in the back of the pickup truck that would hold 3 birds of prey. And a lot of times I would have 1 or 2 of them filled with my birds, and somebody else would be with me with their bird in it in a 63 Chevy pickup truck. That worked very well, except it was only 2-wheel drive. The next vehicle is I owner-built a early 60s Chevy Suburban, which had become the carryall in the Chevy line, and it worked really well, but got everything inside the vehicle. And right behind the seat was the box with the 3 hawks, and you could turn around and open the box and get out a hawk and get out of the car with the hawk ready to fly, and that was pretty cool. And then the back end of the vehicle was a place to put all sorts of luggage for traveling, and the other half of the back was for a dog. That worked really well. And then I bought a 1987 S15 Jimmy, and the thing that I really wanted out of it was a standard transmission, because both the pickup truck and the Suburban carryall had standard transmissions, and you could go anywhere and do anything with a standard transmission. To get the standard transmission in the S15, I had to go to Detroit to get it, and broke it in on the way home. And the next day, I took it hawking. The vehicles were designed around what I thought I needed to hunt with falconry. Gun hunting, in the middle of the day when you're in Wyoming, you can't fly your falcons at the sage grouse because the golden eagles are on soars and they want to eat your bird. So in the middle of the day, you have to find something else to do. And I've learned to be very good at long-range shooting with high-caliber rifles, which is a very unique skill set. One of the people that come to our group is an American Airlines pilot that has enough money to buy very high-end rifles, and he bought an Accuracy International 338 Lapua and an Accuracy International 50 cal, and the 50 cal was a lot of work to shoot. The 338 Lapua is very habit-forming for very long range. If you know what you're doing, you don't get hurt, yet this thing carries. We were shooting at targets as small as a 5-inch circle at 880 yards, and Dave, the other guy, could hit this target with the first shot by doing all the math to figure out the wind drift and the range and over a hill or across a valley and all that stuff. He became very good at it, and I was right behind him. The guns that I were using was 30-06 and 308, and that's more like artillery when you do it for range. So what's that got to do with falconry? It made me a very good shot with a rifle in the middle of the day in Wyoming when I couldn't fly the bird. So it was another exercise. Have I shot stuff? It was a lot of work. My uncle said that they were raising in Colorado the permit fee for elk from $275 to over $500. If I wanted to go elk hunting, I needed to do it that year. And I took my 444 lever action Marlin, went elk hunting and shot an elk. And they're a big animal, plus or minus 1,000 pounds. Lots of work. The problem with gun hunting compared to falconry is the thrill is from when you see the animal to you shoot it and you get to it and it's dead, and then the thrill is over. Falconry, the thrill is when you get ready to go hunting and it's still a thrill till the time you get home. The length of the adrenaline rush and the thrill can be a lot longer than falconry. I think I've got everything. Oh, there's another page. Falconry within society. I have done many educational programs at all levels of education. One of the interesting events was I was supposed to show up at a Methodist church basement for the Cub Scouts, and I had more parents and grandparents at this get-together to learn about falconry than I had Cub Scouts. I've done Montessori Circle, which is kids that are preschool, and kept them entertained and educated when they can barely speak, all the way up to fully adult people in adult situations, even older adult groups, and keep them informed and entertained, which seems to be the necessary thing before you teach them what falconry is. The necessity of doing this showed up today as one of our falconry birds caught a partridge, and someone beat the bird to death before the falconer could get to it. So we still have an educational problem with falconry, with society understanding what we do and why we do it. Boy, did I get off. Interviews with press and media. You have to be careful. Are we all right? You have to be careful with press and media because they're just like the general public. You got to understand it takes a long time to understand what we do in falconry. You just can't explain it in a nutshell and have them write an article and have it be correct. And you can't imagine how bad they can mess things up just with even the correct information being given to them. You have to be prepared to prepare the media person to understand what you're doing before you ever do the media event, before you ever sit down and do the newspaper article, before you ever submit to a magazine article, before you ever set to a television interview. They really need to understand what you're all about before they ever do the publication. Senior falconry people. I went to the Welsh Hawking Club meet in 1987. Got to spend some time with Laurent Debastier. That was precious time. I've got to meet South Dakota, Don Hunter, that started raptor research. I've got to meet captive breeders that have been doing it as a commercial enterprise. I've got to meet falconry people that have been doing it since they were a kid that are actually older than I am. I have gone to the NAFA meets not to show off, not to just to get to fly, but to improve upon my education in falconry. I thoroughly believe that falconry is an art, that there is no right way to do it, no wrong way to do it. There is what works for you and for the bird you're flying. and you never know what that's going to look like. And to criticize someone else for their style and practice of falconry is completely wrong. I rewrote a book that was written by an Englishman that had it so wrong in the beginning that the most important part of the book I wrote, that I changed what he said. He said that all you got to do is get the hawk trained enough to get it to come back and then go hunting with it. There's no art involved, and that set me off. I said the art involved deciding what bird to fly, where you fly it, what weather conditions you fly it in, what weights you fly it, what quarry you fly at, what environment you fly it in, all, what clothes you wear, what kind of hawking bag you have, how thick your glove is, who made the hood that fits over the, whether you're using GPS or just simple radio telemetry or a bell. There's still, I heard people here using, where I'm at now, using bells still to keep track of the bird overhead. It's still a good idea. You don't have to look down, be looking down at your GPS in your hand or keep getting out to your antenna to find out where the bird is, because if you hear it overhead, out of sight overhead, it's overhead. It's right, go in and flush. The bell is a big help. You just can't say that you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. It's an art. The more you know about falconry, the more you know you don't know, and the more you know you need to know to be able to do it at the highest standard of the sport. If you want to end there, you can. I think I haven't wandered. I don't think I've peregrinated. Traveling outside the country. I joined, let's start over, okay. I met Gary Timbrell at a NAFA meet in, I think it was in Amarillo, Texas, prior to 2016. It was the 2015 NAFA meet. I may have the location wrong. It was not an IAF joint meeting. I remember that. Gary said the IAF meet to come to is Ireland, because everybody from the EU can come to Ireland to fly their birds without exceptional or special permits. That the nation of Ireland is not going to require the falconry people to have an Irish hunting license, an Irish falconry permit. Actually, the Tourism Ireland and the nation of Ireland invited us to come to Ireland to do the falconry meet. We also had a joint meeting with the sustainable use of wildlife that also happened as part of the meeting. So my Beverly and I, we've been together now 14 years, Beverly and I have, decided to go to Ireland. It's the first time she's been on the continent. It was only the second time that I've been on the continent. We flew into Shannon on the far west side of Ireland, the nicest airport. Our car rental was 50 feet outside the back door of the airport, which was really neat, really nice. I did learn to drive in the parking lot of the airport on the wrong side. The biggest problem with driving on the wrong side of the car is where the rear view mirror is. It's in the wrong place. And so I drove like a truck driver using outside mirrors for most of the time I was in Ireland. But what we got to experience in Ireland was absolutely incredible falconry at the best practice. We spent most of our time snipe hawking with peregrine tercels in supreme condition over supreme dogs, red setters, Irish red setters, and a red and white setter, which is a separate breed. It was a fabulous dog. So that wedded us. So we've been 2016 to Ireland. 2017, we didn't want to go to Abu Dhabi. 2018 was Germany. We made good friends, very good friends in Ireland and Germany. 2018, that's Germany. 2019 was outside of Seville, Spain, and Carmona. Got to fly with some fantastic falconry people. Learned a lot outside of Spain. I mean, outside of Seville, flying down there from some fantastic people. People we met in Germany invited us to their house. We spent the first 2 weeks that year of 2019 of December at their house on Lake Geneva. Absolutely thrilling adventure. He captive breeds gerfalcons and peregrines. It was really hard to refuse a bird from him, but by the time I got it to the United States through CITES and the 30-day federal quarantine in Miami, it would be totally worthless for anything I'd want to do with it. So I didn't do that. So traveling now, we're doing international traveling with falconry connected through IAF, and it's been a fabulous adventure. The people we met have all been fantastic, and we wouldn't trade it for anything. No, I'm probably through. I can't think of anything else. Some other people to interview. Can't suggest anybody right now. I hope I got what you want. I hope I got, yeah. I tried to stay on subject. I hope I did close enough. Was there ever a quietus or stop on my falconry? No. Once I have been flying a bird. I have had a bird for falconry since the fall of 1968 continuously. Yes, we don't fly birds all year round, and when I had just one bird, it was set aside to molt. The red tail I had, the red tail I had in the 70s up to 84 would actually fly year round. If somebody had a brand new eyas or a fresh caught passage in the fall and it needed to have a rabbit to be entered with, this red tail would catch the rabbit and know that I wanted it for an entering, because I would go out in the backyard and grab her and we would go hawking. I wouldn't weigh her or anything, and she would fly, catch a rabbit, and she would hook the rabbit with one foot and hook the other foot in the ground and hold it till I got there, so we could use that rabbit to enter and get the other, usually red tail, get it started in the proper aspects of falconry. Buka wasn't so hep to that. She, on the other hand, when she catch a jackrabbit, she'd grab it by the butt, yank it backwards, and put the other foot between the ears, pull her 2 feet together so all the jackrabbit could kick was air instead of her getting kicked and rodeoed and torn up. She would be safe, and the rabbit would be subdued that way. Our United States black-tailed jackrabbits, and especially the right-tailed jackrabbits, are big animals and have bigger legs even than your European hares. Okay, probably ought to quit. How many birds have I had? When you're raising Harris hawks, you have had every one of them. Falconry birds, I jumped in with both feet swimming. You know, went from one red tail and 2 kestrels and a roadside hawk, and then backed off from that and had just the red tail for 2 years of junior college, and then all of a sudden it was the red tail and the Harris. The other thing about flying the red tail and the Harris and the cast, we had trained them to where either one of us, being Valdemar or me, could go fly the 2 of them together. And the way we did that is the Harris always came to the glove, the red tail always came to the lure. And I remember one time I was hawking the 2 of them by myself and it started raining. And the red tail, when it was ready to go home, would fly over your head real low. And you knew it was, so you put some meat on the glove and hold it up, swing the lure, and the red tail start coming and throw it on the ground. It'd come down on the ground, and you'd hook the Harris hawk into the ground, and you'd give the red tail a piece of meat off the lure, pick up the lure, and then put the red tail on your shoulder and walk out the field with the 2 of them. And one time we were at a NAFA meet in St. Louis, that would be 1973, and we were walking alongside the 7-Up plant where they bottle 7-Up between the fence to protect the commercial property and the drainage ditch for the commercial property, and a rabbit got up in front of us, and the Harris hawk took off and caught one end of the rabbit and swung it around, the red tail caught the other, and they were facing each other, and everybody was saying, hurry up, they're going to crab, they're going to hurt each other, and we're walking down. I said, no, they weren't. And here's the two of them looking at each other, looking at the rabbit, looking at each other, and then look at us, come on, we're done. We're done. So yeah, they worked together as a team, and they knew we were catching rabbits, cottontail rabbits, climbing cedar trees, 3 foot up in the cedar trees, going up, because the Harris hawk would go underneath the cedar tree and up along the trunk and catch them up in the cedar tree. And that's when we started backing off a little bit and trying to find harder places to fly, because it was getting too easy. Falconry can be too easy. Not very often, but every now and then when you put everything together, the two of them flying together and the peregrine with a duck a day, yeah, that was pretty easy. You just followed along and they flew you. Okay. That's about. My interest in falconry, once my introduction, was from the people that I found that were connected with it. It wasn't through television, it wasn't through a movie. I saw, the movie The Vikings where Kirk Douglas gets hit by a goshawk, and I'm going, no, crap, That was pre-falconry, and that wasn't my stimulus. So it wasn't media that stimulated him at falconry. It was, on the other hand, once I found falconry books, that's a whole other addiction. Falconry art, that's another addiction. Falconry gloves. I have a collection of falconry gloves. I'll never use them. The time in my life where I would have flown an eagle would have been the late 70s. I have a beautiful eagle glove, gorgeous. It'll be gorgeous forever because it's past my time to fly an eagle. I will never, I'll know how to. I've handled one, but for have an old eagle, I don't want to be just one bird and have to be careful of other birds that it's around and all that stuff. It's a very unique dedication to fly an eagle. I believe they're probably, from what I've heard here, is that flying golden eagles is probably even safer than flying red tails, as the red tail hasn't been trained correctly. I never had that problem because I always knew how to train a red tail correctly, because that's what I cut my teeth on. Boy, now I'm wandering, all right. Can you rearrange this too? Because the part I said about the art is probably a good place to end the program.
Thank you very much for your very interesting video interview. So thanks you so much. Yeah,
you're welcome for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to do this.